are rules you're taught, and then there are the ones no one speaks out loud. The real rules. The ones that define who holds the frame and who folds under pressure. Most people think power is something you express. But Machiavelli saw through the performance. He understood that real power doesn't reveal itself. It withholds, especially when you're being watched by people, by opportunities, by your own reputation. It's not about being impressive in public. It's about being untouchable. See, there are certain subtle behaviors, tiny emotional leaks, that can quietly erode your presence without anyone needing to call them out. You don't need a scandal to lose power. Sometimes all it takes is one misstep in the wrong moment, one overshare, one flinch. And just like that, the illusion is gone. Let's start with something people do all the time: complaining. In private, maybe it feels cathartic. But in public, it tells the world two things. One, that you're not in control. Two, that you're hoping someone will care enough to fix it for you. And both of those are poison to presence. The moment you show the world your frustration, you stop being a mystery and become someone who needs something. Someone who's breakable. So instead, endure privately. Let the hardship shape you in silence. People don't fear your pain. They fear your ability to absorb it and keep walking like nothing happened. Now let's talk about insecurity. Everyone has it, sure. But not everyone broadcasts it. Say you admit you're not confident, or you tell people you're not good at something, even jokingly. What you're really doing is branding yourself. Every time you say it, it sinks into people's minds till it becomes a fact in their perception. Not because it's true, but because you handed them the script. Machiavelli would say, hold the frame. Even if you're unsure, don't leak it. Stand tall. Let your posture lie for you if it has to. Because mystery is power, and certainty, even fake certainty, holds the room. And then there's the temptation to share your plans. That big goal you're working on, keep it quiet. Because when you announce it, two things happen. People either sit back and wait because they think you've got it handled, or worse, they get just enough information to sabotage it. The truth is, when no one sees it coming, your success hits harder. So let your results speak for you. Move quietly. And when they ask what you're working on, give them a smile and say, you'll see. Another trap people fall into is taking sides in petty conflicts. It feels noble. You're standing up for someone. But in public, it makes you predictable. And when you're predictable, you're no longer playing the long game. You're showing your values before you even have the power to enforce them. Instead, stay neutral. Observe. Watch everyone else reveal themselves. And while they burn bridges or forge alliances based on emotion, you wait. Because neutrality isn't cowardice, it's strategy. Now this one might sting, chasing attention. There's no bigger red flag than desperation for validation. Whether it's a loud laugh, a forced joke, or constantly needing to be acknowledged, once people sense that you need something from them, they control the dynamic. Machiavelli knew that power lies in indifference. When you enter a room and don't try to be liked, people pay attention. Not because you begged for it, but because you didn't. Want real influence? Be the person who doesn't need the room. That absence of need becomes magnetic. Pressure is another test. Public stress, criticism, accusations, they reveal character. But here's the thing. People don't need to see you explode to know you're cracking. A clenched jaw, a shaky voice, a shift in posture, it's all a leak. Machiavelli didn't flinch. He absorbed tension like armor. That's the goal. Not to be robotic, but to remain composed. When nothing ruffles you, you become the emotional anchor in the room, the one everyone adjusts to, and never ever over-explain yourself. That's how you lose the frame. Someone pushes back and suddenly you're trying to justify your every move. But once you do that, you're no longer leading the narrative. You're reacting to theirs. You've handed them control. Machiavelli would redirect. He wouldn't soften. He'd make the other person question their own reaction. He'd say, "Perhaps you misunderstood me." Or better yet, "Perhaps you understood me perfectly." Either way, he never gave up the power of ambiguity. Bitterness is another form of self-sabotage, especially when it's about rejection. Someone excludes you, ignores you, picks someone else, and you feel it. But the second you show that pain in public, you're saying, "I care. And now I'm weaker for it." And Machiavelli would call that emotional suicide. So instead of showing hurt, show detachment. Stillness. Make it seem like their exclusion was a favor, that they just removed themselves from access to your energy, because that's how you flip the script. When you don't chase, they start wondering if they should have. And when it comes to calling out people more powerful than you, don't, even if they deserve it, especially not in public. Why? Because it rarely hurts them, it just makes you look resentful or reckless. Machiavelli would never attack directly unless it served him. He'd wait for the right moment, for their guard to drop, and then strike precisely quietly, or let someone else do it for him. That's how you weaponize truth. Not by shouting it, but by releasing it when it's useful. Power isn't just what you say. It's how carefully you choose what not to say. And when you start subtracting the habits that signal weakness, something strange happens. A vacuum appears, and people project onto that vacuum. They assign meaning to your silence. They start making up stories to explain your behavior. And suddenly, you're not just a person in the room. You're a presence. That's where the real game begins. Not avoiding mistakes, but designing the perception others build of you. Now that you've started removing the behaviors that leak weakness, you need to replace them with signals of power. Quiet signals, invisible ones. The kind that whisper louder than most people shouting. Let's start with endurance. When others complain, you remain silent. When they vent, you observe. It's not stoicism for show. It's calculated invisibility. Because in public, when you endure without speaking, people start asking questions. They wonder what's going on behind your calm. They begin to fear what they can't measure. If you're under pressure and show no cracks, they'll assume you're stronger than you are. And sometimes, that illusion is all it takes to win the game. That's what Machiavelli would have admired endurance as mystique. Not the kind that brags, but the kind that makes others feel insecure just by comparison. Your pain, it's a weapon. But only if no one can see it clearly. Then there's ambiguity. Most people think clarity is power. But sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is be unclear on purpose. You're not lying. You're just never giving them enough to feel certain. If someone asks, "What's your plan?" you smile and say, "I've got something in mind." That's it. No follow-up, no detail. When you operate like this, people start reading between the lines. They start overthinking, second-guessing, wondering what you know that they don't. And once their mental energy is consumed by your ambiguity, you've already taken the lead. Not by dominating, just by being unreadable. That brings us to the idea of subtle power signals. The strongest people don't need to announce their strength. They leak it, slowly, accidentally, on purpose. You don't have to tell people you're building something big. They'll notice you're hard to reach, that your time feels protected. You don't need to declare that you're winning. They'll see you celebrating nothing yet, moving with calm confidence. That's real power. Not in the display, but in the delay. The ones who speak least often end up saying the most. And when you do speak, keep it sharp. One phrase, one moment, That's all it takes to leave an impression that lasts long after you've left the room. The same applies to loyalty. Public loyalty is often theater. It's loud, performative, and almost always transactional. But the loyalty that matters, the kind no one sees, the kind you express privately, quietly, without credit, because that builds bonds behind the curtain. And that's where real influence happens, behind closed doors, away from the noise. When you support someone privately, they trust you deeply. When you stay neutral in public, you stay untouchable. Now let's talk about presence. Most people enter a room trying to be noticed. You don't. You enter and create contrast. You speak less, but when you do, the room leans in. You laugh less, but when you do, it lands. You don't crowd the spotlight. You stand just outside it and pull the gravity toward you. Because in a room full of noise, the one who holds their silence becomes the center of gravity. That's the power of controlled withdrawal. When others seek attention, you become attention. And when someone tries to challenge you, don't rush to defend or attack. That's how people lose their balance. Instead, you break the tempo. You pause. You lean back. You give them nothing. That stillness is a shock to the system. Because they expect conflict, and instead they get a mirror. One that reflects their own panic. Machiavelli would call that a preset posture, a practiced move for pressure moments. The stare that holds longer than expected, the silence that makes them flinch first, the calm that turns their aggression into a performance. You don't need to fight. You just need to never match their chaos. And in doing so, you control the tempo of the room. Here's another shift. Replace over-explaining with micro-mystery. The more you clarify yourself, the more you trap yourself in their frame. But when you say less, when you leave sentences hanging, you become a canvas for their imagination. They fill in the blanks. And when people assign meaning to you on their own, it often exceeds what you could have said anyway. Someone asks, "Why did you say that?" You say, "Let's see how it plays out." Someone questions your motives. "It made sense to me." You give them just enough to stir curiosity and nothing more. Because Machiavelli never wanted to be understood. He wanted to be interpreted. And those interpretations gave him more leverage than any explanation ever could. When you're rejected or excluded, don't respond with bitterness. Don't sulk. Don't explain. You simply leave. Not with a storm, but with cold, clean detachment. And that exit, that's what lingers. The fact that you didn't flinch, that you didn't argue, that you just disappeared. Now they wonder, was this planned? Did we just lose something valuable? Why does it feel like he's still here? That's the kind of exit that increases your value. And if you ever return, it's on your terms. From a position of power. And when someone crosses a line, you don't attack in the moment. You wait. You observe. You let time reveal their weakness. And when it's most effective, not dramatic, not emotional, you respond with surgical precision. One sentence, one truth, planted at the perfect time. It looks accidental, but it's anything but. Machiavelli didn't call someone weak. He let them act weak in front of the right people, and then said just enough to push them off the edge they were already standing on. That's how you shape the narrative without ever needing the spotlight. Now comes the part most people overlook, not how you act when you're in the room, but the legacy you leave after you've exited it. Presence is what people feel when you're around. Power is what they still feel when you're gone. And that's where the myth begins. Machiavelli understood that perception lives in gaps, not in noise. He didn't fill the air with words. He left silence and let people's imagination do the rest. Because when you don't explain, don't react, don't clarify, people start constructing their own narrative about you. They don't just see your actions, they replay them. They ask each other, what was he trying to say? Why did he leave like that? What's he planning? This is how you turn presence into legend, by becoming just a little less accessible than expected. You arrive late. You leave early. You say just enough to make people curious, but never enough to be understood. And over time, your silence starts to echo louder than anyone else's words. So when someone brings up your name in conversation, there's a pause. There's weight. People don't know what to say, but they say something, because you've installed a question mark that lives in their minds. You've made yourself a figure, not just a person. And here's the twist. When someone questions your reputation publicly, you don't defend yourself. You never have to. Machiavelli knew defending yourself confirms the accusation. But if your presence has been constructed carefully, someone else will step in. A quiet ally. Someone who believes in you, not because you begged for support, but because you moved with enough clarity, silence, and mystery that they trust you even when they don't fully understand you. That's the move. You don't react to rumors. You don't chase the narrative. You let the myth speak for itself. But there's one final tactic that separates the calculated from the forgettable: the exit moment. The last thing people remember about you is often what defines the entire interaction. You could be brilliant, magnetic, in full control. But if you linger too long, if you say one thing too many, if you leave when the room is tired of you, you lose power. So instead, you leave while interest is rising. You exit with timing, not exhaustion. In the middle of a conversation, you glance at the time, smile, and say, "Let's finish this another day," or "I've got something I need to handle." Not as a rejection, but as an elegant close, something that creates space and leaves them thinking. Because now they're not talking about what you said. They're talking about why you left. And you've become something they revisit, not something they move on from. Presence is defensive. It keeps you from falling. But real power that begins when you use it. And Machiavelli never just wanted to be respected. He wanted to walk into a space like a loaded weapon, not always fired, but always noticed. That's what most people miss. They think mastering restraint is the end of the journey. It's not. It's the start. Because restraint without direction is just quiet effort. Precision, real strategic precision, is what turns that effort into influence. So you begin to destabilize rooms, not by raising your voice, but by using silence as a weapon. Not to protect yourself, but to provoke reactions, to set traps. When someone tries to push you, you don't react. You wait. You let them escalate, over-explain, lose control, trying to fill the space you've left open. And the crowd, they see the unraveling. They see who holds the frame. Let your silence become a test. Because silence reveals who's actually in control. The weak can't handle it. They rush to speak. The powerful let silence swallow the unprepared. If someone corners you with questions, you don't give answers. You redirect. Why did you do that? Becomes, why does that matter to you? What are you planning? Becomes, wouldn't it be smarter if I didn't say? And just like that, the conversation shifts. You own the moment without owning the topic. You've just reversed the spotlight. Machiavellian control isn't loud. It's subtle. Micro movements, small signals. The way you glance, the way you pause, the way you sip your drink after someone finishes ranting. These are quiet messages. I'm not impressed. I'm not rattled. I already understand more than I'm letting on. That's how you disturb people without touching them. It's power without threat, and the discomfort you create. That's your presence lingering in their body, long after you've left the room. And yes, praise can be a tactic too, but not to flatter. Machiavelli used praise like a scalpel. Strategic, specific. His timing is perfect. She doesn't need to say much, you feel it. These lines don't just elevate others, They protect you. Because the powerful remember who subtly guards their image. Now you're in their orbit without looking like a follower. That's shielded power. And remember, always watch without being watched. Scan the room without signaling that you are. Who's performing, who's trying too hard, who's quietly competing with you. Machiavelli never stared. He studied. Because once you know who's weak, who's insecure, who's bluffing, you don't need to attack. You just wait. Let their patterns trap them. When someone disrespects you, don't retaliate. Withdraw. Not as a tantrum, but as a quiet, calculated absence. Talk to someone else. Shift your energy. Don't explain it. Just disappear from their radar. Now the crowd sees the fracture and the disrespectful one. They feel the emptiness. They try harder. They unravel. Not because you punish them, but because you left them with their own insecurity. And if you do speak, say something that lingers. Not a speech. A sentence. One line that replays in people's minds later. Power doesn't respond. It observes, or you'll understand later. Drop it casually. Let it echo. Because repetition isn't how you stay remembered. Precision is. At the end of it all, you don't want to be understood. You want to be studied. You want to become the contradiction they can't quite define. Warm eyes. Cold tone. Engaging presence. Untouchable energy. Sometimes kind, sometimes distant. Always controlled. Machiavelli never wanted to be seen as powerful. He wanted to be perceived as inevitable. Someone who bends the space around him just by standing still. Someone who doesn't seek attention but always gets it. So don't walk into a room hoping to be noticed. Walk in knowing you'll never be forgotten.